Today, I'm going to be answering questions that came through my Instagram account on all things Epstein-Barr virus or EBV. And this is a big one. This is the cause of the vast majority of chronic mystery health issues out there. So if people could just focus on learning as much as possible about the Epstein-Barr virus, how it behaves in the body, how you use foods to weaken it and kill it off. If you could just focus your attention there, that's where most of your progress is going to come from. But there's so much distraction out there. There's so many people focusing on what are actually just downstream effects of Epstein-Barr that so many people get lost. They plateau. They never make any progress. Because at the end of the day, Epstein-Barr is a true root cause. It is a true root cause in the sense that if you can remove it or remove most of it from your body, there's all these other things that people are worried about. They don't matter. They don't cause the chronic health issues. Stress doesn't cause the chronic health issues if Epstein-Barr isn't there to flare up when your immune system is weakened from stress. So very important stuff. I love working. I love helping other people figure out how to lower their viral load. And if you don't know, my name is Dr. James Nall. I used to practice functional medicine. I quit that many years ago. And now I help other people overcome mystery chronic health issues without low carb diets, without high protein diets, without never-ending lab tests and guessing games, and without totally pointless supplements. We just get right down to business, fixing what needs to be fixed. And I've been fortunate to help people all over the world with a variety of conditions learn how they can heal them. And that's why if you look at the people I've worked with, there's chronic fatigue, there's Hashimoto's, there's Graves' disease, there's sarcoidosis, there's a bunch of other symptoms. But the reason I can get those results for them is because we go after actual root causes. And these root causes, they can manifest as these different labels. But at the end of the day, if you just learn how to pluck this stuff out of the body, you're going to be loving life again. So I'll put a link down below in the description. If you want to explore what my work looks like, I'm happy to have that conversation with you, but let's get right into it. One more thing, disclaimer, this is for informational purposes only. I don't know you. I'm not working with you, so it is a good idea to work with your practitioner. Do what's best for you. This is not meant to tell anyone specifically what they should be doing for themselves. So keep that in mind. All right. That being said, let's get to the good stuff. So first question is, can it be eliminated from your body? The short, unfortunate answer is no. And the reasoning behind this is Epstein-Barr is what's known as a herpetic virus. So it's in that herpes class of viruses. And those are always going to remain in your body no matter what. And if you think about it, when you hear the word herpes, what are the first kind of things that come to mind? Think about cold sores or maybe genital herpes, right? And what do we know about those? Like, you're just not you have to live with them, right? Same thing with Epstein-Barr. But the goal is to starve off enough Epstein-Barr so that it's no longer causing any problems. And when you do this and you have a small amount left in your body, but it's not active, you've learned how to starve it, you're not feeding it anymore, having that little bit left actually works in your favor because it keeps your immune system primed so that as you come into contact with other strains of Epstein-Barr throughout your life, you're not going to pick up those other strains because you can have multiple strains of Epstein-Barr. It's not like it's just one thing. It's lots of different varieties of it. And look, I realize it kind of sucks to hear this and to think about it. Like, I just can't get rid of it. But guess what? Like, you're not alone. And that's an answer to another question that's coming up. It's okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be good. It's not just you. Everyone is dealing with this stuff. So it's okay. But, it is important to understand that, like, it doesn't leave your body completely. It just doesn't do that. All right. So how is Epstein-Barr virus contracted? How do you pick it up? Contracted. I said contracted like it's going to build us a porch or something. How is Epstein-Barr virus contracted? All right. So this can happen in lots of different ways. It is important. Like, it is harder to pick up Epstein-Barr than like strep bacteria, because strep bacteria, you could, in theory, just kind of like touch a dirty door handle or a grocery cart handle, and you could wipe your face and boom, you have that strain of strep in your body. Epstein-Barr doesn't work like that. And it's not like a respiratory virus where somebody coughs or sneezes and it's floating around and it can enter your body like that. So it is harder to contract than those, thank God. But how does basically everyone on planet Earth end up with Epstein-Barr? Let's go through some of the ways. So it can be passed down from parent to child. And this is very cool information, because how many of you people watching this now were told or just believed through your own research that whatever your mystery health conditions or symptoms, they're genetic or they're hereditary, or, Aunt Becky, she had Hashimoto's, and grandma, she had Hashimoto's. So I have Hashimoto's. Well, not much I can do about that. That's hereditary. It was written in the stars that I'm going to have Hashimoto's. No. Thankfully, you have a lot more power than that. But what you're seeing there is you're seeing different pathogens, Epstein-Barr being the big one, that gets passed down through family lines. There's other things involved there too, like toxins. People pass down different toxins like heavy metals. And so family members can have very similar brews or mixes of root causes that are going to manifest in at least very similar patterns or symptoms or conditions. Isn't that mind-blowing? Doesn't that make so much more sense than just saying like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, nobody really had Hashimoto's 100 years ago, but now, it's just a genetic thing. It's just a familial hereditary thing. That's crazy. That's crazy to go around telling people that's why they're sick. That makes zero sense. This makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've got that. You can pass it down parent to child. Happens all the time. Kissing is another way. When it's active and you're having a makeout sesh with someone unbeknownst to you or them that they have active EBV, you're going to transmit it that way. And by the way, what's the connection between mononucleosis and Epstein-Barr? Epstein-Barr is what causes mononucleosis. It's just one of the many labels that gets slapped on a certain presentation of Epstein-Barr virus. And so when Epstein-Barr virus is in what's known as stage 2, goes through 4 stages. Stage 2, it means it's active in your blood. And that's when it'll get labeled as mononucleosis. And for some people, they're going to feel like they were run over by a truck. They're going to feel awful. You're going to be tired. You're not going to want to get out of bed. You have the sore, scratchy throat. Just very, very sick, right? And this is most famous for happening to teen, college-age kids. And a lot of that has to do with their immune systems run down. They're staying up late. They might be drinking. They might be partying. Their immune system's not doing so hot. And that gives a chance for a pathogen like Epstein-Barr to take hold in the body. Sexual contact. So a sexual partner has Epstein-Barr, you're going to have Epstein-Barr. That's how it's going to go. whatever your partner has, you're going to have it too. I don't think that's exactly news to anyone. But that's just another way that it can be transmitted. So you could have your own strain or strains growing up. And then in theory, the more sexual partners you have, you could potentially be picking more strains up as you go along. But if you know how to do the right things to keep Epstein-Barr weak, like we talked about up here, you can negate a lot of that risk. Okay, so I wrote anything that enters the body, but really what I meant was anything that, especially anything that enters the body that bypasses kind of typical immune defenses. So intramuscular. So something that I'm not going to say it here, but something that you might even have done at a doctor's office through a needle can certainly contain cells that have Epstein-Barr virus. They're not checking. They're not screening for that. It's a way you can pick it up. Medical treatments. If you had to get a blood transfusion, you can pick it up like that for sure. Absolutely. And then I almost feel bad talking about this, but hey, you're here for information. You're big boys and girls. You can handle this. This is one example that Anthony William, medical medium, he likes to share, and but I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just spit it out here. So imagine you're at a restaurant, your chef is maybe you ordered some raw oysters. You're going to have a raw oyster feast. And they're in the back, they're using their little oyster knife and they're putting it into the point of the oyster and they're popping open those shells so you can enjoy them. And that knife slips out a little bit and they don't have a glove on because they're in a rush. Maybe they're just using a towel to hold it down. And that knife bypasses the towel and goes by and nicks the side of their finger. And a tiny speck of that blood flies off and lands in your oyster. Nobody can see it. Nobody knows it happened. And they have an EBV infection. You're going to have it now too. So one of the probably less common ways that happens, but it is absolutely possible. It definitely can and has happened. All right, moving along. What is the number one food that feeds the Epstein-Barr virus? Great question. And if you've been following along for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this. It's eggs. Eggs. That staple food. This is a big one. And this is a tricky one because a lot of, with dairy and gluten, foods like that, a lot of people can have like immediate reactions to that. And like they know there's, I don't feel good as soon as I have any of that. Eggs can be a lot sneakier in that like you don't always feel bad when you have them. And I remember before I learned all this and I would, I was trying to do paleo it was like trying to make paleo work for me. It's like, all right, I got to have my 3 eggs for breakfast or whatever it was. And I started eating them more consistently and my chest would always just break out in this rash. And I was like, all right, well, something's probably up with eggs. But eggs are the number one food. Even the eggs that are from your backyard or your neighbor's backyard or your friendly neighbor's cells on the side of the road that are, the nice brown color and they're organic and they've never had any artificial hormones, like all the good things that an egg can possibly be is still going to feed the Epstein-Barr virus. And there's an underdeveloped protein in the egg that the Epstein-Barr virus can feed on, and it can grow. And what's crazy is you used to be able to just look this up. I don't think it's on the internet so much anymore. I think it's kind of been wiped out, but it's true. In labs, I'm sure they still do this to some degree. If they want to have a virus multiply for whatever medical treatment or experiment they're trying to run, one of the main ways they'll do that is they'll take a petri dish and put a chicken egg in the middle and put the virus on the egg. The virus feeds on the egg and it replicates, and boom, you have all the viruses that you need or that you want. So if eggs are still coming into the diet, it makes it very hard to win the war. It makes it very hard to win that war. And it's interesting as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of, if you look at a food label, so let's say you buy a loaf of bread or something, or you buy any packaged food that has an ingredient label, and you go through and you see it's got XYZ, and then at the bottom in bold, it will say this product contains, and then it lists typically certain foods. It'll say, it'll say eggs, it'll say wheat, it'll say dairy or milk. Those are the big ones, right? Those also happen to be the big foods that feed Epstein-Barr and bad bacteria. Those are the foods that people have learned to avoid and have allergies or sensitivities. I'm not talking about anaphylactic is a different conversation, but like people who will say celiac, and when they eat wheat, life just gets really miserable. So they have to watch out on those labels. Like, all those foods are, for the most part, foods that fuel pathogens. There are a couple that don't necessarily, like sometimes they talk about nuts. Those don't. I'm trying to think of what else is typically bolded down there. But that's why those foods are problematic. And it's not just random, right? And it hasn't always been like that. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But eggs are the number one food that feeds the Epstein-Barr virus. All right, next question. How can we know which strain or which type that we have, especially without obvious symptoms? And there's no way. There's no test out there that exists that can tell you have this strain of Epstein-Barr, or how many strains you carry. But once you kind of accept that, you can just move on from that, from like maybe one day that will exist, but it doesn't exist now, and it's not close to existing now. The good news is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have one of the more aggressive strains. It doesn't matter if you have 10 strains. It doesn't matter if you have one of the more docile strains. It doesn't matter if you picked it up a long time ago or if it's more recent. None of that matters, because the way that you kill off one strain works on every single one. So all that matters is that you start doing what needs to be done to lower that viral load. So medical research, they now recognize or know about two different varieties, two different strains of Epstein-Barr virus. And there's over 60. And that number is growing. And maybe they catch up. Maybe they start to put more effort into learning more about Epstein-Barr at some point. But what's the plan? You just want to wait around and like hope that they figure it out, and hope that industry is pretty cool with like ending chronic health issues? I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket, pun intended. And look, I'm not saying everyone's evil who is a medical doctor or works in that field. That's not the reality whatsoever. But the reality is, if you're waiting around on that, that's from in my opinion, that's a risky game to play with your health. That's a risky game. And even on the functional side, I mean, they're not on top of Epstein-Barr like at all. They're taking some of this information, they're piecing it together, but then what they have their clients do with it, that's a mess. My God, it's a mess. Okay. Does Epstein-Barr virus give people lymphoma or cancer? Yeah, it certainly can. Very interesting one. I'm not sure how controversial this will be, because I know lots of people have lots of theories on what is cancer. Cancer. To have cancer cells form, you have to have a certain aggressive strain of the Epstein-Barr virus, plus an ample amount of a toxin like the heavy metal mercury. That is ultimately what physically turns into cancer cells. And the way it works is highly fascinating. But if you remember, we talked about eggs being the number one food for Epstein-Barr. Yes, that's true. There is something that fuels them that they can eat and fuels them even more strongly than eggs, though. And that is toxic heavy metals. Toxic heavy metals, which is another thing that we all have to some degree in our body. But if you have that certain strain of aggressive EBV plus a toxin like mercury, it'll feed on mercury, and all viruses produce a waste product. Just like humans pee and poop, so do viruses. And when its waste product comes from feeding on something like toxic mercury, that produces an even more toxic waste product. And in some cases, it will eat its own waste product. It's like my dog does sometimes. And when it does that, it then creates an even more toxic waste product, and it repeats that cycle. And that's eventually what can turn into cancer cells. And that's what causes most cancers. What foods are highly regarded to be like just anti-cancer foods, right? Just like pretty simple, mundane stuff like fruits and vegetables. Those are anti-cancer foods. Guess what foods are also have like significant antiviral properties? Fruits and vegetables. Yeah, there's definitely a connection there. All right, next question. How do you know if you have it? How do you know if you have Epstein-Barr virus? Well, just to make this real easy, just about every adult on planet Earth has at least one strain of EBV. It would be much more unlikely to find someone that doesn't have a strain of Epstein-Barr. So hopefully that makes you feel like, hey, we're all in this together. We all got to figure this out, right? So it's at least you shouldn't feel lonely, right? But yeah, safe to assume that you have it. And then if you're dealing with mystery chronic health issues, I mean, that just increases the odds even greater that you're dealing with EBV. There are kind of secondary ways that you can use as like signals to point that you have something going on in that department. So if you get like an inflammatory test, like just like a high sensitivity C-reactive protein or something like that, that's probably coming from EBV. If you get your white blood count done on your blood work and it's either high or low, that's a sign your immune system's battling something like Epstein-Barr. But other than that, it's just helpful to come to terms mentally with like the fact that pretty much everyone has it. So on to the next step. Like, what's next? All right, well, let's figure out what to do about it, right? It's a great segue to the next question, which was asking for the best foods and supplements to kill it. Now, look, I know everyone wants like we want to compartmentalize and be like, all right, this fruit kills Epstein-Barr, and this type of potato kills Epstein-Barr. The truth is, pretty much all fruits, vegetables, herbs, and potatoes have antiviral properties. That's where you need to be hanging out. Bananas, yes, bananas are great. They're fantastic. Celery, yeah, amazing. Very good. But especially starting out, we don't need to worry about like getting hyper specific with that right now. Like, you just need to learn how to bring as much of these into your life as possible. That should be your goal. That's it. That's where the magic happens. These are significant sources of antivirals. Chicken, tuna, eggs, those don't heal anyone of anything, right? They don't. They can, yes, in certain subsets of people, they can do some tricks in the body that can overcome some symptoms for a period of time, but it's not a long-term sustainable way to try to gain and maintain health. These are. This is where you want to be. Supplements, okay. Zinc and vitamin C. Those are crucial for strengthening your white blood cells, which is that's your immune system. So your immune system, while Epstein-Barr is active, your immune system is in a nonstop battle. It is an absolute beast. It doesn't sleep, doesn't take breaks. It is constantly battling these bugs if you're not doing the right things for them. So what happens over time is your immune system gets dragged down. It gets weaker because it's always working. I mean, I can't imagine if we all had to work 24/7 nonstop, no breaks, no support, how long would we last? Our immune systems, they are miracles. Absolute miracles. So yeah, it's worth the effort to learn how to take care of them. Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah. Okay, so it's a little bit hard and feels uncomfortable. It's okay. Like, what else is more important than your immune system? So zinc and vitamin C, they are incredible at strengthening your white blood cells and fighting off paralyzing Epstein-Barr. Most herbs that you're going to come across are good antivirals. They're good. So this is part of the equation, right? This is part of the equation. Flooding your body with antiviral foods, herbs, supplements, that's critical. The other part is coming back up here and stop feeding it. You got to stop giving it the food that makes it active, that makes it stronger. That's not helping you. You got to move on from that at some point. That's a big part of what I help my clients do, because I say that, but I also understand, like, if you first hear that, it's a shock to the system. It can feel overwhelming, and it doesn't mean that you have to like drop everything day one. And in my program, I have like my own specific method, and I have a 4-phase progression that kind of meets people where they're at. And so, we gradually step down from these foods that are problematic, and we learn to find foods and meals that actually are enjoyable to you to replace these other foods. So it's as easy of a transition as possible, but that's the reality. And if that feels like super heavy to you or kind of like discouraging, don't let it be. Because I've been where you're at. I was not a health nut. I can promise you that. Some would argue I was the opposite of a health nut. And I managed to do it. So if your health is a priority, anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. Okay. Why do you say it's impossible to get rid of all of it? It's not just me. I mean, that's every field, traditional, functional, alternative medicine. Everyone agrees herpetic viruses, you just can't get rid of all of them. It's odd. I don't exactly know the reasoning behind why that is. Because I focus on just what needs to get done. Right. And I accept that. Like, this made sense to me. I knew that before I knew the rest of this information, that herpetic viruses are going to hang around in the body. So, that's just the way it is, but it's okay. All right. Next question. How would you know that you have it? Well, there are some ways where you can technically see that, like, you've been exposed to it, right? So you can see it on testing. So you can get blood drawn, and they can run a Epstein-Barr virus panel, and they can look to see kind of the history of what's gone on in your body there. But again, it's safe to assume that you have it, at least one strain, like we talked about before, because it is so prevalent. Now, if you have, mystery symptoms, or if you have an autoimmune label, if you've been diagnosed with ME/CFS, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, those are all Epstein-Barr virus. That's it. That's what they are. But let's play a hypothetical. Let's assume you're one of the very few adults who does not have a strain of Epstein-Barr. It's possible that another herpetic virus is what's causing your issues. So maybe you are clear from EBV. You've never been exposed. That's awesome. You could have a strain of shingles virus that can do very similar things in the body. You could have a certain variety of HHV virus. You could have CMV. You could have any of these other herpetic viruses that all can cause very similar symptoms. All mystery kind of chronic health issues that can get you labeled like autoimmune. So the nice thing about that, if you were in that boat, what works against Epstein-Barr will also work against any of the other herpetic viruses. So it's not like, okay, got it, fruits and vegetables for Epstein-Barr. Oh shit, like I got to do carnivore for shingles. No, not at all. You still are going to be within the same framework there. Still want those foods that are loaded with significant antiviral properties. Okay, cousin question to that last one. Is there blood work to detect Epstein-Barr virus? Yeah, you can get an Epstein-Barr virus panel done. I don't order these because, knowing what I know, they don't matter. They don't change anything. They don't change anything at all, what needs to be done. Partly because of what I just mentioned in that last question. Let's say somebody tested negative and just never had any exposure. Okay, well, they could have a different herpetic virus. Or they could have a strain of Epstein-Barr that just isn't being tested for, that's not picked up on those tests. So the same protocols, they still need to go through the same protocols and the same framework. But yeah, there are tests, and they basically will tell you, do you have an active Epstein-Barr virus infection? Or do you have antibodies that indicate that you had a previous infection? Most everyone is going to trigger or going to test positive for antibodies indicating a previous infection. Pretty much everyone's going to test positive for that. This one, testing if it's active in stage 2, like mononucleosis, you might show up for that, you might not. But that's just showing you if it's active in your blood. And where it gets confusing, if you're just listening to, a practitioner who doesn't know this stuff, is that they're going to tell you, okay, If you have antibodies to it, they're going to tell you it can't cause any problems. They just brush it off like not an issue. Not an issue. But what that really tells us is that, okay, it was active stage 2 at some point. And well, we know it didn't leave the body. And to a lot of people, they think it just kind of goes to sleep and goes dormant when it's not active in the blood. That's not what happens. It doesn't stop. It dives deeper. It goes into your liver. It can go into your spleen. It can go into your reproductive organs next. And it will build up strength. If it's in your liver, it's feeding on remnants of eggs and dairy and gluten there and toxins like heavy metals because your liver is a filter. So it loves hanging out in the liver. It's like a Las Vegas buffet for Epstein-Barr, unfortunately. And so while doctors are trained to say like past infection, we don't have to worry about it. It's at least building up strength in the liver, waiting to make its next move. And while it's there, it can cause lots of problems. You have eczema, you have psoriasis. That's from a certain strain of Epstein-Barr feeding on toxins like toxic copper in the liver. And that produces a certain type of waste product that floats to the surface of the skin, causing eczema or psoriasis. It's not autoimmune. Your immune system never attacks you. Your immune system is not confused. It's not faulty. It's just working 24/7. So, yeah, a lot of people will go and they'll maybe ask their doctor for an EBV test and they'll get this. And then the doctor is just like puts the kibosh on thinking that's a possible root cause because it happened in the past. But that's an important note on all blood tests. Blood tests are not a clear indicator of what's actually happening in someone's tissues and their organs and their glands. And maybe the most obvious way to think of this is like when they look at vitamin or mineral amounts in the blood, like B12. If you have high amounts of B12, most doctors are going to tell you, you don't need to take B12. Look how high it is in your blood. But that has no bearing on answering the question of, is there B12 in that person's nervous system and in their liver? Maybe not. Is that the right form of B12? Maybe they just take a real crappy form of B12 that can't be absorbed by the human body. Or maybe it's all the B12 from all the animal meat that the human body can't use floating around in the blood. So what shows up in the blood is one thing of a very much more complex picture that's going on. So you really want to start to look at it from that perspective. Okay, can Epstein-Barr virus cause peripheral neuropathy? Yes, it can. Because all these herpetic viruses, when they're active and they have a food, they produce a neurotoxic waste product. And that waste product can land on different nerves throughout different parts of the body, and it can cause inflammation. And that's neuropathy. Neuropathy is an inflamed nerve. It's not a dead nerve. It's an inflamed, irritated nerve. Now, if we're talking about the more typical kind of lower body neuropathy in the legs, in the feet, that's more often from shingles, waste product irritating the nerves. But it potentially could be Epstein-Barr. Up in the arms and the shoulders, if it's that type of neuropathy, that could be Epstein-Barr, certainly. All right. Does Epstein-Barr cause hypothyroid? Yes, absolutely. 95% of all thyroid issues are from Epstein-Barr. So we talked about stage 2. It's active in the blood, then goes and hangs out in the liver. Then when it moves into stage 3, that's when it goes and attacks the thyroid. It wants to attack the endocrine system. So it'll actually burrow into the thyroid gland. Now, I think some confusion comes around like, well, Hashimoto's, that's autoimmune. So I get that that's from Epstein-Barr and the thyroid, because we can see the inflammation, we can see the antibodies. But what if I just have a sluggish thyroid? Like, does that mean it's something else because we're not seeing really the inflammation come up on blood work? No, it's just think of it as a less aggressive strain of Epstein-Barr, or one that hasn't progressed enough to trigger those antibody tests and those inflammatory markers yet. But give it enough time, it would get to that point. Yeah, so so Graves, hyper, nodules, cysts, tumors, goiters. Am I missing any? What are the other big thyroid conditions? They're pretty much all Epstein-Barr. That's the root of all of them. There's a small percent that can be from radiation poisoning, but vast majority, 95%, Epstein-Barr. All right, next question. How to detox it from the body? How do you get it out of the body? Well, there's a couple things you want to have happen. You want to starve it, so you want to cut off its food supply. So eggs, dairy, gluten, we don't want that. So we want to cut off its food supply. Then we want to kill it. We want to flood our body with antiviral foods, herbs, supplements like we talked about. We've kind of covered those earlier, right? And then here's another key component. You want to keep your body in a state where toxins and waste can actually leave the body. So what do we mean by that? So it is possible to eat lots of good antiviral foods, take good supplements, and cut out the foods that feed it. So you can be doing those things. But if you're getting a lot of your calories from fat-dense foods, protein-dense foods, that makes it more difficult to actually get that waste out of the body. So kind of the third component here is you want to keep your system running cleanly. And the way you do that is you have to bring down your fats. So it's this gradient where, you want to, and it actually works out because in order to get more of these antiviral foods like fruits, potatoes, vegetables, well, you can't just add more calories and more volume of food on top of what you're already eating, right? So we need to replace things. So that's the swap. You want to cut back on the fats and the proteins. And this is a big reason why even people who are plant-based or vegan can still run into big problems with their health and their healing because they're still typically on a high fat or high protein diet. And that's not conducive to getting this stuff out of the body. And this is one of the biggest areas that people get hung up on, both mentally and then some things physically when you try to switch over to this style. Is there's a lot to go into there, but I'll just say it's where a lot of people, this can all make sense on paper, and then they go try to put it into practice, and they're like, this doesn't feel right. I'm actually not understanding this now, and don't I need this? Which is a big thing that I go over repeatedly with my coaching clients, is helping them understand how this actually works, what this actually looks like. Okay, does it cause immune disorders? Yeah, in the sense that that's what your immune system is fighting. So I'm not sure what exactly immune disorder you're talking about. I'm guessing some type of autoimmune condition. Yes, that's what you're seeing there. Is you're seeing your immune system attack a foreign invader like Epstein-Barr virus. Because remember, There's only two things that can cause inflammation. You can have an injury, like a splinter in your finger, or a foreign invader, which is going to be a virus like Epstein-Barr or a harmful bacteria. So anytime the immune system's involved with any type of chronic health issue or symptom, yeah, it's safe to say that Epstein-Barr can be at play there for sure. And once you kind of take that in and you accept that like, okay, my immune system, it's not like crapping out. It's actually just working its heart out for me. Let me try to help it. That alone can be a huge momentum shift in your healing. That can lift you up. That can raise your spirits because, man, it gets dark with chronic health issues, doesn't it? Like, it's easy for us to feel hopeless. It's understandable. But just that one switch in understanding in your mindset can light a fire that can take you very, very far. It definitely did for me. I was like, yeah, this makes more sense. And yeah, I didn't like thinking of myself as a perpetual lifelong victim that really had no way to correct the situation. So when you start to see it truthfully, you get a lot of power. And that's obviously a good place to be. Okay, is Epstein-Barr virus, is it natural or is it manufactured, i.e. manipulated? Great question. So what is now known as Epstein-Barr virus, it started out naturally occurring a virus. It was even slightly beneficial in the human body. It definitely was not harmful. But it was played with in, we'll say, like secret labs, not like a lab that like any of us can walk into or drive by and know about it. And that is what has created the harmful versions that are out there now. This is where it developed its ability to feed off certain foods like eggs. And so if you're someone who hears like, eggs, dairy, gluten, they feed viruses, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense because people ate those foods for, the existence of those foods in mankind, and we didn't have those diseases back then. Great point. That's great critical thinking skills. Here's the answer to that, though. It's because back then, these pathogens like Epstein-Barr, they were not what they are today. That happened through manipulation. That's how they got to this point. So it's not fair. It's obviously terrible. Nobody likes it. But ideally, we should just kind of focus on doing what needs to be done for ourselves to get ourselves healthy. Then if we want to take on bigger causes, that's awesome. But, let's save your body first and think about that other stuff later. Can I continue my usual Epstein-Barr virus fighting diet while pregnant? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You can, my wife has done it. I've known and worked with lots of people who have been able to do this while pregnant. The herbs, do check with your doctor on the herbs. There are certain herbs like cat's claw that you do not want to use while pregnant or conceiving. But the diet part, eating lots of fruits, potatoes, vegetables, yeah, that's great. That makes for a healthy pregnancy. A lot of issues that come up during pregnancy can be traced back to Epstein-Barr. Now, with the pregnancy thing, like there's no sense in creating like fear or anything around that. Like, obviously, most women today are not on any type of diet that addresses Epstein-Barr, and a lot of them are able to deliver. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of cases where that doesn't happen. But don't let this create fear or anything like that in you. But yes, it is possible. All right. As symptoms improve, does that mean that we are getting rid of Epstein-Barr virus? Yeah. Lowering your viral load does lead to healing. It does lead to symptom reduction. Absolutely. So as your symptoms are getting better and going away, you can take that as a sign that you are killing off Epstein-Barr. You are lowering that viral load, and that is a beautiful thing. We love to see that happen, and it happens all the time. How is it linked to tinnitus? So tinnitus, if you don't know, is that kind of low-pitched, buzzing, very annoying sound that many people have in their ear. The way that it's linked to Epstein-Barr is that the neurotoxic waste product from Epstein-Barr can get on and inflame nerves of the inner ear, the acoustic nerve. That's what it is. Now, you can have tinnitus from just exposure to loud noise. So if you worked some type of job where you were exposed to loud noises, if you went to a lot of concerts, that can cause physical injury to the ear, and that can cause tinnitus. But if you don't have that, it's most likely from Epstein-Barr. Does Epstein-Barr cause thyroid stimulating hormone to go from hypo to hyper? Absolutely. But what that means is that you have multiple strains of Epstein-Barr virus in your thyroid at the same time. And they're just taking turns. Go from hypo to hyper, back and forth, back and forth. Not unusual, but that's what that is. Does the MTHFR gene mutation cause Epstein-Barr virus to reoccur easier? Thank you for asking this question. This is a fun one to think about. So all genetic mutation tests, all they are saying is there is inflammation here. And that's usually from Epstein-Barr virus. In other words, they're not actually looking at your DNA under a microscope. They're just seeing signs of inflammation. And they're telling you that that's a genetic mutation. This is why these genetic mutations, this has been known for a long time. You can go get a genetic mutation test, and it can be, positive. And you can change things in your lifestyle. You can go back and have that same test, and it will no longer be positive. How would that even be possible? It's because these are just a downstream effect of pathogens like Epstein-Barr and a high viral load. These are, hopefully, if you listen to one thing and you take it seriously, hopefully it's this. This is not a root cause of anything. Your genes cannot cause disease. It's not possible. It's exactly like your immune system cannot cause disease, cannot cause health problems. Just like your hormones, they are not a cause. They themselves don't go out of whack for no reason. These are not root causes. Epstein-Barr, yeah, that's a root cause. Do you remember when I said at the beginning, like, if people would just stop worrying about all the noise and just get really good at learning how to address Epstein-Barr, it's going to fix a lot of issues. This is why. Okay, does Epstein-Barr virus cause hot flashes at age 75? Well, this is true at any age. So if we look at what a hot flash actually is, it's from a overburdened, toxic liver. And as it's trying to do its jobs, it will heat up. It can run hot, like physically it generates some heat. And to help cool it off, the body will disperse that heat. That's a hot flash. That's what it is. And yes, Epstein-Barr can be part of what clogs up the liver, leading to hot flashes. Absolutely. All right, last question for this session. been on EBV protocols, trying to get off Humira for rheumatoid arthritis, can't seem to make progress. Great question. I'm not sure that I'm going to have an exact answer for this person here because there's lots to consider. I'm going to assume that you're doing the same protocols that I'm already talking about. I'm going to assume that. How long? How long have you been doing those protocols? Have you been doing them 3 months? Have you been doing 6 months? Have you been doing them 2 years? Have you seen any progress? Like what's the situation there? This is this is something where we have to understand that like no two cases of rheumatoid arthritis are the same because we all have different blends of viruses, different types of Epstein-Barr. You can also have shingles, you can have strep bacteria, and we also have different combinations of toxins that they can feed off of. So we all have different amounts of heavy metals, right? So while one person can seemingly totally get rid of their rheumatoid arthritis quick in what you would consider to be a quick amount of time, maybe a few months, other people are going to have a much longer journey. There's other factors besides those I just mentioned too. There's lots of factors that go into that. So we have to keep that in mind. Some other things to think about. Are you doing the right protocols? I'm going to assume that this person is doing the right protocols. Are you mixing protocols? Are you doing some of these protocols, but then you're also taking some bits of information from over here? And, well, maybe I like to do intermittent fasting. I'm like, I think I feel better when I do that. And you're unknowingly releasing adrenaline from the intermittent fasting, which ultimately can fuel Epstein-Barr. That's something to consider. That's something that's fairly common. Have you brought in supplements? I'm not the biggest supplement guy in the world. I love supplements, but in the sense that I'm a food first practitioner, health coach, there are certainly times where we're going to need to bring in supplements. So if you feel like you're maxing out on the foods, it's time to look at supplements. What supplements can we bring in here? Have you done deeper cleanses? These are the top healing tool, deeper cleanses. And these have nothing to do with restricting calories. They're not about doing a juice fast or water fast or anything like that. These are about shorter periods of time where you're even more disciplined with your food. And these create the safest, the most direct, the most effective way to lower your viral load, to kill off these pathogens. That could be happening. That's something to consider. Are you pulling out heavy metals? Do you have that part down? Because if your liver's chock full of aluminum and mercury and lead and toxic copper, yeah, cutting out eggs, dairy, gluten, that's important. You got to do that. But you also have to learn how to pull out those heavy metals. What are your stress levels like? If we were able to create like two identical people, but one just had a much more stressful life than the other, the one with the more stressful life is going to take longer to heal. And that's one of those things where we don't always have a lot of control over that, but it's good to just understand that so that you don't get discouraged and you get pulled off track and you start adding in other things that are never going to help you long term. But, just because your expectations haven't been met, you start to do these other things that are not going to be useful. Is there some nerve damage involved here? Nerves take a long time to heal. So is this something where the aches and pains, like there has been progress there, but it's just slower than you'd like? You're going to have more patience when the nerves are involved. Has there been bony deformations? Once that takes place, there's not as much healing that can happen there potentially. So lots of factors to consider here with rheumatoid arthritis. At the end of the day, all any of us can do is learn how to build ourselves a sustainable, enjoyable lifestyle with food that works to address this, that works to lower the viral load, certainly not increase it. And then we just have to take that as far as we can. And that's why I do coaching, is because I know the potential of these protocols in all of your health issues. But I also know a lot of people struggle with figuring out how to implement it and how to kind of develop the understanding or the mindset, if you will, that allows them to stick with it long enough to get their results. And at the end of the day, are any of us ever going to be perfect? Ever going to have absolutely 100% perfect health? Probably not. But, that's not what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for me to be in as much control as possible of my health. And different people have different expectations. And I've seen this before. I've seen people where a lot of people would kill to have the results that they have. But because maybe not everything is to where they like it, they're kind of down in the dumps about it. Perspective can change a lot for different people in these different situations. So, my advice, figure out what you're not maxing out here. What can you max out? Can you do more supplements? Can you do deeper cleanses? Play around in there. See where you have space to grow. Do that. And anyone who needs help, who thinks this is interesting, who potentially wants to get on a proven program that is going to lower your viral load and make this as easy and as enjoyable as possible, click that link in the description. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I love this stuff. This stuff, to me, is the most interesting thing in the world. It's crazy to think that anyone has the ability to take their health to this level outside of doctors. It's crazy. So hit me up if that's you. Thanks for watching, and I hope to do more of these.